We do have one hand raised. Again, this is for items that are not on the agenda. So I don't want to butcher this name, so I will just say the beginning of the name is JIU. So I'm going to allow you to talk.
Mute. Okay. Hello?
Yes, and could I interrupt you for one moment, Mr. Fang? We are not at this point at the agenda item that I believe you wish to speak to, unless you if you're here to speak about the 140 Arroyo Grande, that item is not yet up for public comment. So if you're speaking about something else, go ahead. If not, we'll take you off, and I look forward to hearing from you when we get to that agenda item.
Okay, I can wait.
Right, thank you. Director Paulson, are there any other speakers interested at this time?
I do not see any other hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is the consent calendar. We have one item to be acted upon with a single motion, and that is the approval of the minutes from our March 10th, 2021 meeting. Does any member of the commission or member of the public wish to pull that item from the consent calendar? Seeing no one raising their hands, may I have a motion for approval of the consent calendar? Commissioner Hanson.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Vice Chair
Yes.
Birch?
I'll second.
Thank you. We'll call the roll. Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Commissioner Barnett,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas,
Yes.
Commissioner Suzuki,
Yes.
Vice Chair Birch,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well, so the motion passes. We now move on to the public hearing, item number 2, which is requesting approval for demolition of an existing single-family residence and construction of a new single-family residence on property zoned R1.8, located at 140 Arroyo Grande Way, APN 424-23048, architecture and site application S-20-013. Property owner applicant is Yogesh Jam. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. And the project planner is Sean Mullen. I understand Mr. Mullen will be giving the staff report tonight.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Before you this evening is a request to demolish an existing residence and construct a new one-story residence. The subject property is 6,425 square feet located on the southwest side of Arroyo Grande Way. The proposed residence would be 2,123 square feet with a 428 square foot attached garage. The application has been referred to the Planning Commission because it is the largest by square footage and floor area ratio in the immediate neighborhood. The project was reviewed by the town's consulting architect, who noted that the original design of the residence was overly complex and inconsistent with several residential design guidelines related to eave height, roof forms, window forms, materials, and garage door design. Excuse me. The consulting architect made 6 recommendations to address consistency of the project with the design guidelines. The applicant incorporated some of these recommendations, but chose not to incorporate those specific to the roof form, and responded instead with a reduction in roof slope and written justification for the roof. The applicant's response to each recommendation is included in your staff report. As noted, the application has been referred to the Planning Commission because it is the largest by square footage and FAR in the immediate neighborhood. The proposed 2,123 square foot residence is approximately 466 square feet larger and has an FAR 6% larger than the next largest house in the immediate neighborhood. In Exhibit 5, the applicant has provided justification for the size of the residence, describing their need for this space and referencing examples of homes with comparable sizes that are located outside of the immediate neighborhood. Based on the analysis provided in the staff report, staff determined that the project is not consistent with residential design guidelines and recommends denial of the architecture and site application. This concludes staff's presentation, and we are available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mullen. Do any of the commissioners have questions of staff at this time? Commissioner Hanson.
I have 2 questions, if I may, Chair. One is looking at the statistics that were provided on the size of the house relative to the lot size. If the applicant or any future resident were wanting to put in an ADU, would they be able to add any additional square footage to this property?
Yes, the property being 6,425 square feet would be allowed an 800 square feet of additional square footage to be used towards an ADU. The town maximum would be 1,200, but if to bridge that gap, you would have to borrow from the size allowed for the residents.
So just to make sure I understand, so there, when you're adding, if some future owner or the applicant themselves decided to add an ADU, they can go above the FAR requirement, because right now they're maxed out at the FAR or very close to that.
That's correct. The town council approved an additional increase in FAR for the creation of ADUs. That equates to, in this, it's 10%, and that equates to 642 square feet. But the state law requires that we allow a minimum of 800 square feet on a residential property.
Okay, thank you for that. So the second question I have is this. Does staff feel that the applicant has done enough to address the consulting architect's recommendations? I noticed in particular the comments about the hip versus gable roof, and the applicant's statement was that the gable roof was consistent with other houses in the neighborhood. Does staff feel that they've done enough, because we don't get a second look from the consulting architect in this case?
Our evaluation was based on the consulting architect's recommendations, and staff felt that the response was not adequate to be found consistent with the residential design guidelines. We did work with the applicant, and they expressed their desire to maintain to retain those design features, and the applicant could provide more detail about any flexibility moving forward. And our planning manager, Ms. Darnowitz, is available, and she may want to expand on this. Maybe not. She may not need to add anything. But
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
I don't need to add much, but I think that is primarily the reason that we are recommending denial, is because the project does not meet the residential design guidelines. It comes to you because it's over for square footage and FAR, but the denial is largely because the project does not meet the design guidelines.
Thank you very much, Ms. Arnowitz.
Thank you for that. Vice Chair Birch, did you have a question?
Actually, Commissioner Hanson asked my question. So
Excellent. Do any other commissioners have questions for staff at this point? Okay, seeing none, then we will open the public hearing and give the applicant up to 5 minutes to address the commission. Who will be speaking for the applicant?
So if the applicant would raise their hand, please. I see a member of the public with their hand raised, but that's not the applicant. So I'm going to allow the applicant to speak. 1 second. And you have up to 5 minutes. Go ahead and unmute yourself and begin.
Yeah, we had some slides which we would like to share. My wife and I would like to go through those slides.
So good evening to all. Let me start with a brief introduction of our family. Our daughter Nitya is freshman in Los Gatos High. Our son just graduated from UC Berkeley, and he'll be attending their graduate program in fall of 2021. I have a dental practice in Los Gatos, and my husband is a software engineer working for Adobe. Next, please. So our project of a new home is primarily need-driven because of many space concerns in our present home, as we have grown-up children and family visiting for extended periods. My dad recently passed away, and my mother intends to visit and stay with us, hopefully once the COVID situation improves. Next, please. Our original home is built in 1958. Times are different now as living space is more important. Average size of a Los Gatos homes sold is trending upwards, as we have shown in the graph. This slide also shows that bigger homes are being built in this town of Los Gatos. Next slide, please. Now, this slide shows our new home in comparison to the neighboring homes. The square footage and number of occupants are marked. We believe that each home has different needs and which is primarily based on its occupant. Next, please.
At this point, we would like to say that our architecture of the home is based on the home shown in photo A. This home has a slope of 8 by 12, but we chose to keep a slope of 5 by 12 with the view of trying to make the mass and the bulk of the home low. We also feel that our home fits in very well because there are existing homes right across the street which are around 16 feet tall. Next slide, please. We want to address the privacy concerns because they are very important to us. We have no windows that have views into the living spaces and yard spaces of adjacent homes. The floor level of the new home remains the same. The side windows have been used only when street facing and backyard facing windows were not possible. There is a 7-foot fence on one side and 6 foot on the other, and we are willing to share the expense to increase the height of the fence. Next slide, please. This shows the left elevation of our new home. We have marked the windows with the neighboring house, and there is no alignment of windows. Next slide, please. In the same way, we've shown the right elevation of our home, and we marked all the windows. And once more, we see that there's no window alignment. Therefore, there should be no concern about invasion of privacy. Next slide, please. We also wanted to address the sunlight concerns. We took photos from our side of the backyard, which is shown below with an 8-foot setback to the fence. The photos taken show the sun at 2-hour intervals, and as you can see, the new home does not block the sunlight. Next slide, please. We also wanted to address the sky view concerns. We feel that the best sky view is from outside in the backyard. It is hard to get good sky views from side windows, and the sky view from our left elevation and right of our current home are shown. And as they show, we also hardly get any sky view. Next slide, please. Finally, we also wanted to address the street view concerns. The front extension of our home does not block the street view of the adjacent home. That is all we have. Thank you. We are willing to take questions at this time.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Do any commissioners have questions of the applicant at this time? Commissioner Hanson.
I had a question about the height of the proposed property. So if from one of your neighbors that said it was going up by 9 feet. And since and if that's correct, first of all, could you verify that? And then second of all, if that is correct, I was just curious as to I understand that keeping the single story that you need to increase the setbacks and go wider, but I'm not sure why you would need to go up another 9 feet, even if you wanted higher ceilings for a single story home. So that's a question I have.
Sure. So I think it's around 8 or 9 feet, you're right. And like we said, the roof is based on our architectural style. That style of home comes with a roof which has a slope of 8 by 12. So if we had kept that slope, the height would have been much more. But we are still willing to work out the heights. We can make the roof slope lower. We can even make the walls, bring them down from 10 feet to 9 feet. So we are most willing to work on the height of the house. We just are more concerned about, the space of the house.
I totally understand. If I may, I have one more question, Chair. Oh gosh, I completely blanked on what it was. So I'll come back later. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners have a question for the applicant? Yes, Commissioner Burnett.
So looking at the plans, if I'm looking at them correctly, it seems that there's an attic space that's up to 7 feet high, and I was wondering why that needs to be at that elevation.
It's just based on the roof and the style. We don't plan to use that space to live, and we might use it to store something. But like I said, if we change the roof pitch, and then that space will be much less than that.
I have a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
So I recall in the dining area, the roof is 12.5 feet tall. I was wondering what the justification for that would be.
That was due to the fact that we could not keep more space in the attic. The rules let us only keep up to like 7 feet. So we had to raise that, ceiling.
All right, thank you.
I have a follow-up question, if I may, to the applicant. So the height of the roof, which you've indicated fits your design, is actually creating some issues with regard to internal volume, if I'm hearing you correctly. Is that correct?
Internal volume, yes. So the mass and the volume is a little more, but like we said, we can work on that.
All right, thank you very much.
But the thing is, we can't have the current height which we have right now. There is no way that the height of the new house would stay the same. So it would go up. But yes, instead of 8 or 9 feet, we can work to make it less than that.
Okay, thank you. And I believe, Commissioner Hanson, do you have your hand up? Or did you?
Yes, I did. And I remember my question. Sorry about that. I was just curious if you had considered as an alternative to get additional square footage going underground, because it doesn't count towards FAR and it reduces the above ground mass. Had you considered doing a lower square footage underneath?
Yes, we have. And we also thought of doing a two-story house. Why we didn't do basement is because that would raise the floor by at least 2 or 3 feet. So then the house would not fit in very well. And we did not want to raise the floor by 2 or 3 feet. And also the place where we live, there are no other homes here that have a basement. That's why we didn't keep one.
Okay, so you wanted to be consistent with the neighborhood and also the issue of raising the floor height.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time? Commissioner Barnett.
I had one further question. In terms of the dormer that I understand you want to keep, have you considered a skylight instead of that?
Yes, we did. And if that's what you say is the best, we will go for that.
Thank you for that comment.
Any other questions, Commissioner Thomas?
I just had one question about the need to demolish the home instead of just remodel and add an addition on to get some additional square footage. So would you be able to share your process for that decision?
Yes, that's a great question. So when we did start, that was our goal. That is why when we did start to say that we are remodeling our house. So everyone we told, the people staying on the left and right, we told them we're going to remodel our house. But as we spoke to contractors and our architects, they say what you want is going to be a huge change. So it's not worth the effort to do it. And instead, you should be looking at rebuilding a new house.
Commissioner Thomas.
And so can you describe or elaborate on some of the changes that you wanted to that you desired to make that made it impossible to really do that through, or not practical to do that through a remodel and addition?
Sure. Our current house, like we mentioned, was built 50, 60 years back. The floor plan is not conducive to adding the living space the way we want. Right now, both our grown-up children are sharing a bathroom, which is not attached, and their room size is very small. And because my son is now at home only, so he's, remotely doing his internship, so he has to attend to all his meetings from either the dining area, because his room, he feels, it's just living out of the boxes, as we shown in the image we attached in one of the slides. So we did consult, like my husband mentioned, to the architects, and we told them this is what we would like to have, which would, suffix our family as far as our living space goes. But even the location of our kitchen is not, ideal to have any more additions. That is why, comparing all the logistics, we decided, okay, it's, better to go in for a new home. You just build like once in a lifetime. So we thought it's better to go so that our needs are fulfilled by a newer construction rather than adding on.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Any other questions? I don't see any hands raised, so let's move on to members of the public. Director Paulson, are there members of the public who wish to speak at this time?
There are, so I don't know if it's Charlene or Ian. They're both listed. And you
Hi,
have-
we're both here. Thank you. We have, thank you for attending, everyone, today. My name is Charlene Land, and I'm here with my husband.
Good evening.
We live at 124 Royal Grande Way. We are on the north side of the Jam house, and we've lived here 21 years with our college-age daughter is here because of COVID. She's been home for a year. And so do we have our slides up?
Yeah, can we share slides, or are you going to post slides?
And so we're also hoping each to have 3 minutes. So
Okay, there we go.
Next slide, please. So we want to say we really support improvements in our neighborhood. We've actually remodeled our house in the last year. And but when we looked at the plans for the Jams, just the size and the scale of their home, it pushes to every setback, and you drive down the street and the storyboards just pop out against the entire neighborhood. And so we're very concerned about its scale. And we learned about the plans on the website last summer, and we've been trying to communicate with the Jams since then. And it's been very hard on us even for the last 6 months. Next slide, please. We have, after seeing the storyboards up, we have 3 key priorities. I think the commission has already talked about some of them. We would like to see the roof lowered because it's impacting our 5 south facing windows. We've taken some photos to show that. And just that their house is coming so far towards us, and it's so high that it's reducing how much of the sky we can see out of our windows. And the windows are 9 feet 4 inches high, which is above our 6-foot fence. And so we have privacy concerns, and just the whole house, the windows are bigger, the roof is bigger, everything's much bigger than the rest of the neighborhood. Next slide, please. And so we wanted to show this. And so they're an internal parcel, and this is the immediate neighborhood. We're having a little bit of issue. We're talking about the roof with the scale in here. But we also want to talk about some definitions that we're going to use throughout the rest of our presentation. The types of roof, gable, we've talked about gable and hip, but they have a gable roof, pavilion roof, and a conical roof on theirs. And it doesn't match the immediate neighborhood. And what does it say? And I think, and so I think,
style.
Yeah, it's just not matching the typical roof style. Next slide, please.
And that's time, Miss Land. So
All right, I'm going to jump in. Okay, so actually they showed some pretty good signs, but this is the immediate neighborhood looking north and south. On the left is south facing. That's actually the GM's house next door. North facing looks the other way. These houses are all very similar in height and volume. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is our view. Now, what you'll see from our view from our south facing windows, we showed 4 of 5. The 5th is on the next one. But the key point is our sky view just goes away. You can see a sliver here in the bedroom view and maybe a tiny sliver in the office after the storyboards, but it's gone. And so that we have a very serious problem with losing all of our sky view for an empty roof. Next slide, please. This one shows that even if we were to get rid of the pavilion's roof, we still lose about 50% of our sky view. And from these windows, that red line is intended to imagine if the pavilion, it's the top of their peak above the conical area. So assuming that the pavilion goes away, it's still quite a loss for us. Next slide, please. This is just front and back. The view on the right is actually from the street behind, and you can still see how that roof makes a significant impact. Next slide, please. Okay, and this is just the privacy issues. David, discussed that, and we're happy to hear that they will be willing to lower the windows. We understand we're in close quarters, but we do want to make sure that there's some level of privacy between us. And having the fence, we're asking for windows no higher than our fence. Next slide, please. This one just a point to make, which is we were concerned about the type of the roof, the pavilion versus the conical versus the hip versus the gable. Typical is hip and gable. And it just kind of reflects the mass, bulk, and scale as talked about in the residential guidelines. Next slide, please. You can go ahead and skip this slide. We're tight on time. So just to wrap up, I showed a picture up here in the top of this slide. But this is a 2455 square foot home, not in the immediate neighborhood, but and it's a corner parcel. But it does have a roof line that's manageable. And that's what we would propose. And yes, they need more space. We understand that, but please don't take away our sky view for an empty attic. And then the next one is privacy. Of course, we think we have some ways to mitigate that, as we've said in our documents. We've got some top-down blinds that we pay for ourselves, and we're willing to work together on the fence. And then just, as thinking through if they're going to do a different style of home, just trying to match the neighborhood a little better.
that's time, Chair.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Director Paulson, is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak?
There are others who would like to speak. 1 second, Chair. So next will be Anna Helmer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did any commissioners have questions for the previous speakers? Commissioner Barnett.
Yes, the owner made a contention that you included in your chart on the square footage, the garage for their proposed house, but not for the other houses. I was wondering if you had a response to that.
Yes, yeah, it's true. We made a mistake. We actually sent an errata to Sean today. So we adjusted the numbers that we calculated, and it was literally we're new at this, and so my wife put in the garage in addition. Even with the square footage of the garage taken out, it's still the largest home, I think, as you calculated in your immediate neighborhood calculations.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions for the lands? I don't see any hands. Director Paulson, we'll take our next speaker.
And that will be Anna Helmer.
For taking this call. I'm here with my husband, Mark Helmer, and thank you to the Lands for your professional presentation there. Mine is very low tech. It's just words in the air. And I'm telling you, this project is too large and complex as currently proposed. The JAMs say that they consulted with their neighbors on either side of them, but they did nothing as far as outreach to any of the other neighbors, like the ones directly behind them. This huge mass and structure would take away our sunlight that we currently enjoy in our yard. It would take away our viewscapes that we've enjoyed for 25 years here. It would be a huge house in the very middle of a block of one-story homes. It looks like a two-story home. There may not be a second story, quote unquote, but it looks like it. So if all of y'all could just drive the neighborhood and see how these homes look, they really are craftsman bungalows. They are not a large structure like is being proposed currently. So we have big problems with it, and we would like to see the scale reduced, please.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions for the speaker? I have one question, but before that, a matter of business, which I've neglected, and that is by a show of hands, would commissioners indicate whether they have seen the property? You visited the property. Thank you very much. Ms. Helmer, are you the neighbor directly behind the project?
We're not directly behind. We are directly behind the land, Ian and Charlene land.
Okay.
And
so you're not on Arroyo Grande. You're on the other street.
We're on Los Ostis, and so we're kitty corner, if you know what I'm saying.
I do. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for the speaker? I don't see hands raised. Director Paulson, do we have any other speakers tonight?
I would just check with Ms. Helmer to see if her husband was also going to speak.
Oh, Mark?
Yes.
Do you want to speak? Raise your hand.
So now, Mr. Helmer, you can unmute yourself. You have up to 3 minutes. We can't hear you, Mr. Helmer. So maybe he needs to use Ms. Helmer's. So let me try that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. He's here.
Hello, I just like to, my concern is privacy with the height of the windows, being able to look over the fences. I see the proposal to raise the fence height, but that exceeds anything over 6 feet exceeds the Los Gatos fence height requirement. So I'm not sure how that works out in that regard. And it takes away, when we look at things that look out at our views in our backyard, just about anywhere in our backyard, we're going to be able to see their extended house. And it blocks, basically we have a tree line, and anywhere where their house is, it blocks out the tree line that we normally see. That's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Do commissioners have questions for Mr. Helmer? I don't see any hands raised. Thank you very much. And do we have any other speakers, Director Paulson?
We do. The next speaker shows as Ramya.
Hi, can you hear us?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Cool. We are the neighbors right behind the house, and we haven't been consulted at all about this construction. We have a couple of concerns on this as well. The first one is the privacy. we are right behind them. If it affects us, it affects a lot because we are just right behind them. And the second concern is I'm severely asthmatic and allergic. We are really worried about the construction so close and so big as well.
Was there anything else?
No, those two. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Any questions for the speaker? I don't see any hands. Director, thank you very much. Director Paulson, do we have any other speakers?
Yes, Mr. Fang, I'm going to allow you to talk. 1 second. Mr. Fang, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you if you talk.
Hello?
We can hear you now. Go ahead.
I'm Joe living in the 144. Next door of the 140 is the left side of the project. So yeah, so I was thank Sean gave me the link for the guidelines for the residential design. So I bring this here because I think there are 3 points is related to my concern. I think everybody knows this, but everything I talk today is related to these three guidelines. The first one is the window should be placed, minimize view into the living space and the yard space near the neighboring homes. Go second first, please. Second slide, please. Yeah. So this is my side view. I made a comparison between this is original plan a couple months ago. I see on that link. This is the current plan. So for that original plan, I let the design say no. The window is too large and too high. This is 9 feet high, but the fence is only 7. So also this window is very big. After say that right now the current plan is here. So the design no response for this 2 big window. He even added 2 more window in this place. So this window is just face to my window on the garage door. So so based on the first guideline, the window should be minimized view. Actually, the design double the view of my side. So next, please. On the back to number one. Back to number 1. So number 1, when window was needed designed inside the building walls, they should be modest in size and not directly opposite the window on the adjacent homes. So go to 3. Go to number 3. So you can see the window is pretty large. I check the neighborhood window, the side wall window around my neighbor. So generally they are 2 times 3, but here is 4 large windows, 3 times 5. They are all above the fence.
That's time. Okay.
Pardon me?
That is your 3 minutes.
Okay, this window is.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fang. Do any commissioners have questions for the speaker? Commissioner Barnett.
Yes, the owner has said because of the existing floor level, which is not going to be changed, that you actually wouldn't be able to see human beings through the windows above the fence. I was wondering if you had any comment on that.
The fence, I didn't finish my presentation because the fence is not that high. Some part of the fence is only six solid fence. So if place like 8 feet and 9 feet the window on that, so it's easy to go through the fence, because I'm almost like 6 feet tall, so it's really make me have a big concern about the privacy.
Thank you for your comments. Do commissioners have any other questions for the speaker? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Thank you very much. Director Paulson, do we have any other speakers from the public?
I don't see any other hands raised, but let's give it a second, see if anyone else would like to speak on this item from the public. I don't see any hands raised, Chair.
Thank you. Then at this time, we'll invite the applicant back to speak, and you will have an additional 3 minutes to respond to the comments made or provide any new information to the commission.
Okay, can we be heard?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, so we just want to point out that we did not reach out to everyone because of COVID, the way things are. We don't want to knock on doors, and we feel that, I mean, we can work with anyone if they want to work with us. The 2 homes which are at our back are raised by 2 feet. Their ground is raised by 2 feet. So those homes are already taller to us than 2 feet. I want to point this out. So that fence is not 6 feet, it is 8 feet. Plus, we can also share the cost to raise that. Second thing I wanted to point out was, the Hormer family has 2 huge trees in their backyard. That is what blocks their sunlight, not our roof. I can give more photos and more proof of that. There was also a comment saying that, our home does not fit in. We feel slowly most of the people who live here are going to either remodel or rebuild their homes. So they will be built the way we are trying to build our home. And we also wanted to point out, we cannot look over the fence because the floor level is the same. We have no interest in trying to look at what everyone else is doing.
And I just want to quickly add, windows have to open into some space, and we have been really mindful of our window placement and size because our floor plan stays the same.
Floor level stays the same.
Floor level stays the same.
Okay, I think that's all we have. So, and like we said, we are most willing to work out on things.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Do commissioners have additional questions for the applicant at this time? Yes, Commissioner Suzuki.
Could you reiterate your need for a taller house?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we don't really want a taller house, but our architectural style we pick, the one which we like, has a roof slope which works like that. Now, like we said, we can change the pitch of the roof, bring the house down, and we can work things out. Our major concern is the space. We need the space. That is more important to us. This is what we feel. But at the same time, we are seeing new homes which are two-story homes. Some have a basement. So I think from our side, we tried that our new home should fit in well by keeping a single-story home, by keeping a ranch-style home. But yeah, of course, there'll be some things which are not liked by the people who stay nearby, and we can try our best to work those out.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions from the commissioners? I have a couple of questions. Your letter of justification indicated that you were wanting to build a French country style home. And in the illustration in your material, the roof is not a pyramid shaped roof. It doesn't come to that point. It seems to have a lower slope. It could be the perspective of the illustration. But my question is, After the changes that the consulting architect has asked you to consider, and thinking about the questions and concerns that your neighbors have expressed, as well as the questions that the commissioners have asked, do you feel that you could move from that style, that architectural style, to something that is more compatible with the height and mass of your neighborhood?
That is the style we like. But like we said, I mean, like I told you, the old house and the new house, so the height has gone up by 8 to 9 feet. But just by trying to lower the walls by 1 feet and by changing the roof slope, I think we can go down by 3 or 4 feet, which means that we would be really going up by only 5 or 6 feet. So the difference between the old and the new house will be 5 to 6 feet. And we also want to point out that the consultant architect did not raise any concerns at all on the roof slope. And at that point, the roof slope was 6 by 12. He only wanted us to lower the eave of the roof so that the exterior walls go from 10 feet to 9 feet.
Thank you. Actually, in the consulting architect's comments before his list of recommendations, he also expresses concern about the overall height of the proposed project. He doesn't list that in his set of recommended changes, but he does express that. I'll pause there. We have Commissioner Thomas would like to ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. My question is just really related to you saying that you are willing to work with people, which is great to hear now that you've heard some of these concerns of your neighbors, and you said that you are willing to lower the roof. Would you be able to describe exactly like by how much you feel like you could change that? Because as we mentioned earlier, there's like 7 feet of space in the attic. Would you be able to lower the roof at all to address some of the concerns of your neighbors?
Yes, so we did give them this option. The land family wanted us to make some changes. We told them what we will do is we'll lower the exterior walls from 10 feet to 9 feet. We'll lower the windows, all of them by 1 feet. And we will change the pitch of the roof from 5 by 12 to 4 by 12, which will lower the house by 2 feet. So all this will add to at least 3 feet of lesser height. We might do 3.5 or 4, but 3 feet for sure we can bring down, and that should have a huge impact when the height has gone up by 8 or 9 feet.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Commissioner Hanson.
Although I know you expressed this, I just want to reiterate, we frequently hear these kinds of hearings at the Planning Commission where someone's trying to rebuild their house and there's some issues that the neighbors bring up. And it's not that often that we usually get detailed PowerPoint presentations that go through all the details of why that isn't the case. So my question to you is, are you willing to meet with your neighbors at this point? Because where things stand right now is you have multiple neighbors that are not comfortable, and it's my feeling that you're not going to be able to, by the statements you're making during this hearing, satisfy them. So are you willing to meet with your neighbors if that's the recommendation of the commission?
So we tried to work with Joe Feng, who lives on our right, but he did not want to talk to us because he says that when I sent him a text, we did not send him the plans. So the land family, which is on our left, we tried to sort it out with them. We gave them this thing that we will bring the house down by 3 feet, but they didn't like it. The two families at the back who just spoke, I don't know what to work out with them because, like I said, their homes are all already raised by two feet. So we don't know what to do for those, please.
So I understand, but I'm going to repeat my question. If it is the recommendation of the commission, are you willing to go back and meet with these neighbors to try and resolve these concerns?
We can, but I don't think it will lead anywhere based on that. I mean, we would like you to make a call based on what we have shared with you, whether you think, the changes that we are saying to bring the whole house down by 3 feet and keeping our space thing in mind, that it's really important to us. What do you feel? I mean, we are kind of inclined to go that way.
Okay, well, thank you for answering my question.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from commissioners? I don't see any hands. And so at this time, we'll close the public hearing portion of this item.
And Chair,
Yes.
I just want to let Mr. Fang, the Helmers, and the Lands know they all have their hands raised. The public portion is closed. There is not going to be another opportunity this evening for you to speak.
Yeah, thank you for that, Director Paulson. And just to clarify, members of the public have 3 minutes each and only one opportunity to speak. The applicant is invited to speak twice so that they can respond to the comments. So there won't be another opportunity for speakers. Thank you for that. All right, so at this time, I'll open the discussion to the commission. Do you have any further questions of staff, comments on the application, or wish to make a motion? Commissioner Hanson.
So this is one of those situations where in some regards, with regard to the zoning code, the application does meet the requirements of our zoning code in terms of setbacks and size. However, that we do have the residential design guidelines, and the reason we have the residential design guidelines is because it's really important, especially in an established neighborhood like this, for them to fit into the neighborhood. So what I've heard tonight is that both neighbors on either side are not satisfied that the design reflects that. There may be some issue about their willingness to meet with the applicant, but the fact that they were raising their hands after the close of the public hearing would suggest to me that they probably are more than willing to meet with the applicant to try and get things in the right place. And on top of that, I'm not 100% sure that they took the advice fully of the consulting architect to make the changes to bring it more in line with the neighborhood. So my feeling on this is that if this is to move forward, it would need to have a continuance to give the direction to the applicant to meet with the neighbors and really meet with the neighbors to try and resolve their concerns and really look at a design that brings the roof height down.
Thank you for that. Vice Chair Birch.
Yeah, I agree with everything Commissioner Hanson just said. What I feel like I heard over and over again really comes down to a couple things, but the main one being the roof and just that overall height. And as Commissioner Barnett pointed out, when you do look at the side view, there's actually a pretty large void between their ceiling and the roof, which makes me think that there could probably be some modifications to the roof pitches and maybe that layout that would bring that massing, that because it just feels very top heavy, and I think that's what everyone is seeing, that could bring that down and more in line with I think the roofs you see in the neighborhood. I also feel that there are probably some issues around just some of the design elements that do have lots of variety of windows and in different places. That I agree with Commissioner Hanson that if the applicant and their architect, I'm going to emphasize that, could speak with the neighbors and be able to be there and see, then in true real time, the architect could be looking at solutions and bring that back forward. That's what I think I would be looking for.
All right, thank you for that. Commissioner Thomas.
I agree with Commissioner Birch and Commissioner Hanson that the main concerns regarding the residential design guidelines and just fit with the overall neighborhood, even though I do understand that neighborhood is changing, and I'm sure there will be a lot of redevelopment in that area over the next decade or so. But that being said, I do think that some of the concerns voiced by some of the neighbors could hopefully be addressed. And I do think the applicants seem willing to make some changes, which makes me really hopeful for that situation. I do really like Commissioner Birch's advice of having their architect also meet. I think that would be particularly helpful for understanding and trying to come to an understanding and situation. Yes, I think that's all I wanted to emphasize. There was one more thing. No, I'll remember it in a minute.
Thank you. Commissioner Suzuki.
I think that nothing that I've heard in terms of complaints clashes with the needs of the applicant. I'm very sympathetic with the needs of the applicant, and the fact that the height of the roof, the architectural style, all that can be amended, and the applicant is very willing to adjust, means that we don't want to deny this application, of course, because of the applicant's needs, but we can't approve it right now. So I think that a continuance is in order.
So I just wanted to jump in. If there are other questions from the commission, show of your hands. But what I heard from the question Commissioner Hanson asked the applicant was that he or they were not particularly interested in going back to resolve issues with their neighbors. Now, that being the case, I don't see that a continuance is the direction that we would want to go. Typically, we do a continuance when there's a desire to come together and work out a solution, but I didn't hear that from the applicant. And they're looking at the consulting architect's comments in detail and looking at what wasn't addressed leads me to believe that this design has many more changes that need to be made in order for an acceptable project to come forward. I do think that there's a major conflict between the desire for the exterior aesthetics, which would involve a very tall roof, and the internal configuration of space that they would like to see for their family. So we've got, as I see it, we've got a problem with the overall architecture, exterior, and the neighbors. And we could ask for the plates to be lowered, we could ask for the roof to be lowered, but then it really isn't representing the style of architecture they were hoping for. So I'm looking to the commissioners to help me understand why a continuation versus a denial would be the path forward. Vice Chair Birch.
You know what, you brought up a really good point. Typically, we start talking about a continuation when we've heard dialogue from both the applicant and the neighbors about an intent to work through some specific items. And when asked about that, you're right. I don't know that I think that that's the desire of the applicant at this time, just because it does make some changes to the architectural style that they want. I was going back and looking at the countryside brick, and it would actually be a pretty decent change to their floor plan to get the roof more in line with what I'm seeing here. And typically when we do feel like we have that impasse, we go for a denial. So if it's not going to be a compromise, and I see Mr. Paulson raising his hand to tell me to stop talking, probably.
Director Paulson, did you have a comment before Commissioner Hanson?
I do have a comment, but it definitely was not to cut off Commissioner Birch, Vice Chair Birch. So I just wanted to point, even though the applicant in their answer to Commissioner Hanson's question was, a general lack of willingness to work with the neighbors, I think they offered a number of changes. I think there might be some benefit. And even if they decide not to speak with the neighbors, if they decide to make modifications to the home that then the neighbors and the planning commission can look at, then there might be some benefit to that rather than should the commission deny it. And that is based on the new rules relating to appeals. So for instance, if you denied it and they appealed it and brought forward those changes, and let's just say hypothetically they lower the plate to 9 feet, they change the roof pitch to 4 and 12. They considered, removing or modifying that conical roof form. that's all going to be considered new information at the council. And, that would require it to be remanded to the Planning Commission generally. So, I'm not sure if the town attorney has the additional input on that, but that's the only thing I would offer. Obviously, the commission can choose to go whichever path they would like, but there may be an interim phase where the applicant chooses to make some changes, and then even if they still aren't to a point when those changes are made to satisfy the commission's input, then at that point maybe you have that conversation. And Mr. Schultz, your mic is open, but I'm not sure if you have additional comments.
Just a couple. I mean, I think in this point, I think you're right that there's kind of a discrepancy in whether the applicant is willing to work with the neighbors and work to make changes or not. So in this case, you certainly could share, and it's up to you whether you want to reopen that specific question to public comment on whether the applicant wants a continuance to try to make changes and work with the neighbors, or whether they want a denial. You would have to open it up to any members of the public for that specific issue on only whether you want a continuance or not. But that might be the appropriate to see if the applicant even wants a continuance, because I'm not sure myself whether that was.
And we've done that before, right? Where we've opened it up. Okay.
Yes, we have.
In that case, at this point, I think that's a germane question. Director Paulson, I would like to open it back up to the applicant to ask specifically that question.
Yes, I think we didn't come out in the right way. We can make any changes that you want as long as we get the space. I mean, the most important thing for us is the 2123 square feet of the home, because that is the main thing.
Okay, let me interrupt you for a moment, because I'm going to ask you one question. The question is, would you be willing to meet with your neighbors, including the neighbors to either side of you, the neighbors across the street, and the neighbors to the rear of your property? Would you be willing to meet with all of those neighbors, not at the same time, and if necessary, using appropriate social distancing? Would you be willing to meet with those neighbors to try to reach some compromise in order to come up with a revised plan to bring back to this commission?
Yes, we can meet with them. We were just trying to tell you that when we put something from our side that we can do this, they did not come back to us saying what they want. They just told us this is not going to work.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to interrupt you. You've answered our question. I very much appreciate that. And so if we could reclose the public portion of the hearing. All right, thank you for that. Commissioner Thomas, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. I think that when I first looked at this agenda item for tonight and this application, I was concerned about the community design guidelines. And I think that most of the things that I heard tonight from neighbors were not necessarily related to the residential design guidelines as strongly as I anticipated, to be honest. And they were more concerned with things like privacy and the pitch of the roof and this mass and scale of the roof, which does have to do with the type of architecture that the applicants are going with. But at the same time, as I am new here, I do want to hear about what other commissioners think and how they feel about that. Like, if the neighborhood is not as concerned about the overall appearance not being in compliance fully with the community design guidelines, what is our responsibility for making that decision for them? Because I think that from what I have now heard from the applicants, if they are willing to meet with neighbors and address the privacy and overall just like roof height and pitch, all those things concerns, is that good enough for us and okay? And I do want to add that I think that the needs of the applicants I'm glad that they restated that the needs, that, you know, their basic needs of the more livable space for them is at the end of the day, the most important thing in what they're trying to accomplish. And I appreciate that because I hear that and I agree with Commissioner Suzuki's comments on that part. So again, I'm just going to reiterate, how do we feel? Because I did not interpret that all of the neighbors' concerns were directly as related to the residential design guidelines as they were with things such as privacy. Really, mainly, I don't know.
Got it. I think we've got the gist of your question, Commissioner Hanson.
So I wanted to say two things. One is that I think all of those concerns are explicitly mentioned in the residential design guidelines: privacy, height, transition and scale. All of these things are documented in great detail in the residential design guidelines. But I wanted to go to the other point that we didn't talk about, which is it being the largest house in the immediate neighborhood. So from my perspective, because it does fit in the FAR and the setbacks in our zoning code, I'm not as concerned about it being the largest house in the neighborhood because we're talking about 2,100 square feet, not 3,000, and then a huge basement on top of that. And so I'm not as concerned about that. There are some other houses outside of that, but it doesn't fit in our residential design guidelines. And I think there's some architectural concerns that haven't been addressed by the consulting architect. So I would definitely still be in support of a continuance. I support the applicant's desire to get a bigger place, and it makes sense, but we're not there in terms of what we have right now.
Thank you for those comments, Commissioner Suzuki.
I wanted to make a note on the applicant's willingness to communicate with their neighbors, which is, I think that they weren't trying to say that they weren't going to not communicate with their neighbors if this application was continued. I think they were just more, it sounded more like they were discouraged by their previous attempt, which didn't necessarily come with a prompt response right off the bat. They did sound like they would truly continue that conversation. Unfortunately, I have to be candid. My internet actually started to sputter out around the answer to that question. I just want to make sure that my observation isn't out of place right now.
I think your observation is accurate in that the applicant has indicated a willingness to talk to the neighbors. However, the conversations may have gone in the past is a thing of the past. And we would also be looking to the neighbors to be cooperative with the applicant to make sure that when called upon in a manner that is equally acceptable, that they will be forthcoming in providing comments and reaching common ground. Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Barnett.
I think there's a big problem with the mass and the bulk and scale of the project. And even though it meets the FAR and the setbacks, the residential design guidelines allow consideration of these other factors. And I'm in favor of a continuance also, but I think as part of that, there should be further consultation with the consulting architect.
So as we have heard from our past projects, we don't get a second bite at that apple when we send these matters on as a continuance. It's my understanding that they won't go back to the consulting architect, and so it's important for us to provide the guidance that we would like them to follow. Staff, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's my understanding.
I'll take a stab at it, and then the director or Mr. Mullen might want to jump in, but we have honored the commission's request to send things back. But as you can see from this staff report, it was staff takes the recommendations of the consulting architect and determines whether or not the project is meeting them, addressing them with design changes. And so in this case, it was staff that determined this does not, the design did not change enough to meet those concerns, especially lowering the eave height, which was a key recommendation, and also changing some of the roof forms. So that being said, we can send it back, but it was staff's determination that the design didn't meet those recommendations. And it's also at this point up to the commission to decide whether or not they think the design meets the guidelines.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm not sure how the other commissioners feel. I don't think that they have met the requirements, or at least addressed the requirements or recommendations of the consulting architect. I don't think that the design that we have in front of us is a design that goes back to the consulting architect. Obviously, it doesn't reflect any changes that would come about as a result of conversations with the neighborhood. So I personally would be in favor of moving this to a continuance and providing guidance as a part of this record to make sure that we are providing the applicant with the guidance that we think is important to follow, in addition to what they determine when speaking to the neighbors. Vice Chair Birch.
Yeah, and I think ultimately in addressing the roof, because it really is just a very large mass, it does help in some of the issues that pertain to the residential guidelines, such as the mass and scale of the neighborhood. Architecturally, the house really doesn't fit in with the immediate neighborhood per se. You know, but by removing the brick and making a few changes, it doesn't feel quite so out of range, you know, for the neighborhood. I do feel like they cleaned up some of those items that Mr. Cannon had suggested. So I certainly trust staff. So I feel like if the applicant would go back with their architect, I'm just going to kind of keep enunciating that, speaking to the neighbors and looking at how they can modify the roof to make that massing be less, bring that height down. I think that will actually assist in some of the other issues around the scale of the home. That's my thoughts. I'd love to know what my other commissioners think too, but that would be the direction I would be asking for.
Any other comments? Commissioner Hanson.
I think what Commissioner Birch said, Vice Chair Birch said was excellent. I would just add on that even though what I heard is the applicant talked a lot about the windows and how it wasn't going to affect the privacy and all that thing. I think that has to be part of the conversation as well. Is it's not one thing to just sit there and say it isn't, but you know they need to show their neighbors how it isn't going to be a problem as well. So I hope they would do that as well, because and that was mentioned by the neighbors behind as well. So I think the height thing will go a long way, but they also need to go through the conversation about the windows and anything else that'll affect their privacy.
Thank you.
You're right.
I think that's right. I think
I forgot that comment. Yes, you're right.
So the primary issues that we're hearing are roof and privacy regarding windows, both window placement and window height. And so those need to be addressed. It would be very helpful. It would have been helpful for me to see side by side, you know, where the windows are on house proposed and on the other side, so we could get a sense of what the lineup is. But I'll trust that the neighbors can figure that out when they see the more detailed drawings. There are still issues with the consulting architect's recommendations that haven't been met. One of those is a nit for me, always has to do with windows. You know, it's a big deal in town that we have consistency in windows, and it's consistency in style of windows as well as function. So, you know, you don't have up and down windows and side to side windows and casement windows in one structure. So it's, you choose the design that you want that fits your architectural style. So that was an issue for me. There was also a comment about the landscape plan, whether it was just going to be bark or whether there were other issues. So I think that I'm looking for a motion to consider, but I would like that motion to also make sure that the applicant goes back to the consulting architect's first report, read it carefully, and try not to assume what he is thinking. Try to understand that it isn't a matter of roof pitch, it's a matter of roof height and overall building height. So the change in pitch was good, not enough. I mean, changing it from a 6/12 to a 5/12 is a small change. So if the commission could consider those concepts and everything that has been discussed, and I'm wondering if we have a motion. Commissioner Hanson.
Okay.
So I'm not going to be able to capture everything everyone said, but I'm going to make a motion that we continue this matter to a date certain, and I would look to staff as to what the date certain is.
I would offer at this point, given the work that's going to have to be done to modify the plans and then meeting with the neighbors, May 12th. And then if the applicant's not ready at that point, we can continue it to a date certain from there.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest that it's continued to a date certain of May 12th. And that's to give the applicant time to go back and, number one, meet with the neighbors on either side and across the street as well as behind them, and go over the plans and work together. And with that in mind, we ask that those neighbors work with the applicant as well and cooperate towards their goal of trying to meet their needs to increase the size of their house while making it compatible with our residential design guidelines. So it might be necessary to look at a different architecture. It will definitely be necessary to lower the roof. And I agree with Chair Janoff's suggestion that they need to go back and look at the consulting architect's comments and really try and understand where he was coming with to bring this in compliance with our residential design guidelines.
Thank you for that. Do we have a second? Vice Chair Birch.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or comments about the motion? I don't see any hands raised. So I will call the question. All those in favor? Commissioner Hanson?
Yes.
Commissioner Barnett?
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Suzuki?
Yes.
Vice Chair Birch?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So the motion passes unanimously. Director Paulson, are there appeal rights?
There are not appeal rights as this was a continuance. Noticing will not occur for the continued date. So if you have questions, please contact the project planner, but we will be looking to reconsider this on May 12th. If they are not ready, then we would continue it at that meeting to another date certain.
All right, thank you. So that closes that agenda item. Now we move on to the report from the Director of Community Development, Director Paulson.
Thank you. I actually don't have anything this evening. I don't want to jump on the GPAC announcement, so I'll leave that for Commission.
Okay, thank you. And so then we will go to the subcommittee reports. In addition to service on the Planning Commission, members of the commission serve on several town committees. Are there reports tonight? I know there are. Commissioner Hanson.
So the General Plan Update Advisory Committee met again last week, and we completed our review of the community design element with a fair amount of edits that need to be forthcoming. And so we also have set a timeline to finish the review of the GPAC is going to have on the general plan update before it comes to the Planning Commission and the Town Council. And that means we'll be finished in hopefully 3 more meetings. We will be meeting again next week and would encourage any community participation and feedback on the racial, social, and environmental justice element that is new to the general plan. We've seen it one time before, and I believe it's been shown to some people, but we'd like as much feedback as possible as we can get on this to make sure that we're on target in conjunction with the general plan as well as what the town council is doing on a more immediate basis.
Thank you for that. What about historic preservation?
Yes,
Vice Chair.
we met today. There were 2 items on the agenda and then 1 under other business. We took a look at a home on 44 Bayview. It will be a technical demolition, and then they'll rebuild it, and they're adding an addition to the back. That was met pretty favorably. We discussed a property at 17631 Bruce Avenue, which we actually took off the historic resource. There was even conflicting information on the dates for this house. And it really showed that I'm going to probably say the wrong word. Sally could help me, but anyways, it looked like really it was mostly reconstructed around 1970. And then under other business, we took a look again at 445 Los Gatos Boulevard and the redesign, which actually wound up not being a redesign, of an addition that they were adding to a historic property. So that was it.
Thank you for that. And did CDAC meet? Commissioner Barnett?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Yeah, there's no further report from the CDAC since my last report.
All right, thank you for that. I did want to just say one last thing is that we do have the Planning Commissioners Academy that begins tomorrow, and hopefully you guys have had a chance to sign up and will be participating either live or by reviewing the tapes at your convenience. But it looks like it's got a lot of good information in the agenda, so hoping for some good learning out of that. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for participating. It was a great discussion tonight, and that concludes this meeting. It is now adjourned.